but only by the cross we come alive. Here we're undone, overcome by heaven's love revealed before our eyes. Show us your glory. Show us your glory. In wonder and surrender we fall down. Show us your glory. Show us your glory. Let every burning heart be holy ground. Show us your glory. Show us your glory. In wonder and surrender we fall down. Show us your glory. Show us your glory. Let every burning heart be holy ground. Jesus, you change everything. Lives healed, whole, found here now. Jesus, you change everything. Chains fall, fear bow here now. Jesus, you change everything. Lives
Anything good this morning? Any good every morning? For all of these things.
Front end now, because I want you to understand when we talk about a baby dedication, it's not just about dedicating a child, but it's about having a consecrated and dedicated lifestyle whereby we follow God. So this morning, I'm going to talk to you about dedicated consecration, how we as believers live a life that is dedicated and consecrated to the fear and admonition of the Lord. So it's not just about parents who are raising their children, though that very much will apply to them. It is about you who are waking up and living every day, that you are able to live that as an authentic Christian with an authentic pursuit of who God is and walking in exactly who you're designed to be. Consecrated, dedicated. Not sharing your affection with any inferior lover, but the one lover of your soul who deserves everything that you are, friend. You were bought with a price. You are not your own. You are His, completely His if you're in Him. Consecrated, covered, immersed in servitude and worship, in the joy and the pleasure of knowing what it is to be known by Him while yet also knowing Him. What a privilege this is. See, we have, I think, an opportunity that's before us, because you understand that the glory of the latter house is always greater than the former house. So there is a permission in this age, in this dispensation, that a previous age did not have the privilege of knowing inside of Him, because there has been a measure of His glory that has only been reserved for this particular age, the one in which you were in. See, many of us are very conscientious of the darkness in the world, and we make make a big show and an open show of how terrible things seem to be. But I have an announcement for you. If things are dark in the world, it's only because you were called to have the greatest measure of light to extinguish all darkness. So if you think the world is dark, it's only because God is raising up those who are meant to bear the image of his light, which you only have an authentic permission to do inside of the place of consecration with him. So you can't represent one you have no idea of. You can't represent one you don't intimately know. Otherwise, what are you showing people? To reveal the face of the Father, you must have taken the time to stare and gaze into his eyes. To love with the Father's love, you must have been able to position stillness to receive of that, because you can't give away what you have not yet received. There's a permission for you this morning, every person in this room, to walk more deeply and more consecrated than you have ever walked with God. See, there are only some whispers you can hear when you're really, really close. There's much we miss because we follow at a distance. But how many will choose to press in, to walk closer, to linger a little longer, to know him like you've never known him before? Because you see, when you draw near to him, he draws near to you. Much of our complaining about how we feel like God is far away from us is actually rooted in the fact that we've never taken the moment to truly draw near. See, if we don't sense his presence in the first 15 minutes of our worship, then we've hung up our coat. If in the first hour of you spending time reading your word, you just don't get it, we think, oh, well, this doesn't work, and we move on. But how many of you are really ready to seek, to search, to discover the mysteries of God? Today we're going to study the story of a mother who knew what she was born for, who knew what she had the capacity to do, yet year after year after year was faced and confronted with the reality that she just wasn't seeing what she thought she was born for. We get to see her struggle. We get to see the tension in the middle of the waiting. We get to see the ridicule, the humiliation, and we get to see her response. We get to see her breakthrough. We get to see her victory. Let that be yours this morning. Amen? Man, are y'all ready? I know it's a baby dedication. I'm going to preach this thing, okay? If y'all hadn't caught on to that yet. Y'all got to 1 Samuel 1 yet? Okay, good, good. No, we on fire. We stay on fire up in here. All right. Y'all wasn't ready for that, okay? Listen, yes, it's really nice. Thank you. Okay. That's what I'm supposed to say. Okay. I got you. Listen, you got a guy up here wearing flannels, some rolled up khakis, and tattoos. All right? You get what you get. All right? 1 Samuel 1, verse 1. Actually, we're going to skip over to verse 2 because there's a bunch of names in there that I ain't trying to say this morning. Okay? Okay. Oh, y'all act like y'all ain't been there. Y'all graze over them too. Yeah, y'all do. And even if you find them out, you don't remember them. All right. All right. I'm going to help you out. Your pastor experiences that too. We're okay. So Elkanah had two wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah did not. Each year, Elkanah would travel to Shiloh to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of heaven's armies at the tabernacle. The priests of the Lord at that time were the two sons of Eli, Hophni. I looked it up on YouTube. That's actually how you say it. It's Hophni and Phinehas. On the days Elkanah presented his sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to Peninnah and each of her children. And though he loved Hannah, he would only give her one choice portion because the Lord had given her no children. So Peninnah would taunt Hannah, and make fun of her because the Lord had kept her from having children. Year after year, it was the same. Peninnah would taunt Hannah, and they went to the tabernacle. Each time, Hannah would be reduced to tears and would not even eat. Man, that's sad. Yeah? That's sad. See, that's what happens when you get crazy and you marry two women at the same time. That's why we don't do that. One is enough, friend. One is enough. All right, that's all I'm going to say about that. That's Elkanah messed up. He reaped what he sowed. That's right. So, apart from understanding that marriage is designed between one man and one woman, there is much that we can learn from this passage, okay? So what I want you to begin to understand is a bit of the context, the historical and cultural context of this day, as that will help us situate and better understand precisely what it is that Hannah is experiencing. So, number one is much of the value and responsibility that women in that day and time had was the responsibility of bearing heirs, okay? So I don't mean air like we breathe, and I don't mean like hair on your head. I mean like offspring, okay? So it was her responsibility to bear offspring so that the family lineage would go on. Also, because much of what they had to do around that day and time was agricultural based, the more children you had, the more hands you had to help around the house. Also, back in those days, you had a high mortality rate, so it just made sense to have a lot of kids. Okay, so that's a lot of context. So what happened during this particular time is Hannah is wrestling because she is not able to fulfill what she feels obligated to fulfill, right? She has a responsibility as a wife to give her husband these offspring. She feels like she is doing everything that she is supposed to do, everything that she knows how to do, yet year after year she is confronted with the reality that she is unable to produce what she is supposed to produce. Is this speaking to somebody? Do you ever feel like you're challenged with that? Like, I know I was born for something great. I know that I was designed for a high purpose in Christ. But every day or every week or every month, every year, I find myself still far away from where I thought I should be right now. I know that there is more that I am designed for, but I'm still not yet able to taste and see those things by which I know I was destined to live out. This is exactly Hannah's predicament. According to texts written by rabbis around this time, it is believed that Hannah was married for 10 years before Peninnah was ever wedded. For 10 years. So you see, the husband was willing to wait 10 years for her to be fruitful. But see, when she didn't meet his expectation within his defined parameter of time, he decides to go through another pathway in order to produce what he wanted to see happen. See, how many of us get impatient in the waiting? And so what happens is Peninnah comes into the story and immediately, though illegitimate, immediately comes in and starts producing heirs. See, what happens when the illegitimate things around you start seemingly producing the fruit that you know that you're designed for, and then before long, that voice starts nagging at you, because this is what happens. Whatever you marry through compromise will ultimately mock your promise. Whatever you marry through your compromise, I said, will ultimately mock the promise on the inside of you. See, Peninnah knew how to mock Hannah because Hannah wasn't able to produce. So every year they would go to the tabernacle, a place where they're supposed to be encountering the presence of God. See, not everybody was invited to go. I don't know if you know this much about Jewish culture, but not everybody could go into the tabernacle that way. Only a select few. See, Eli's lineage comes from the priesthood lineage. There were dimensions of that were only reserved for certain members of the Israel community. And not only when she goes there, but she finds out that this woman who came later into the story gets a double portion compared to what she gets just because she's able to produce something she's unable to produce. See, what do you do? What do you do whenever you find out all of this compromise starts trying to mock your promise? See, some of us are too married to our past that we can't really anticipate a true future of authentic freedom. And so everything in our past, because that's now what we're more married to than to Christ. And so everything in our past starts mocking us. Every insecurity, everything, all of our struggles, all of our challenges, all of these things start nagging at our heels. God sees you. I want to remind you that you were born for such a time as this. You have the capacity to birth a promise. There's a promise on the inside of you. Oh, you're just waiting. It's just not your time yet, but it's coming. It's coming out if you'll position yourself in this time to not listen to that voice, the mockery that tries to creep into our heart, and realize that we're all on our own journey. I know the person to the left and to the right may be on a different pace, a different cadence. I know I'm 28 years old, and it's like, why you got it together and I'm still struggling and I'm 50. Listen, we're on a different journey, friend. It all looks different. Trust me, don't judge your past by mine. Listen, you had some things that went on that didn't go on with me. You had some struggles I didn't have. You know some stuff I don't know. But listen, if you look at it rightly, there's dimensions in character, dimensions of his character and nature you now get to know that no one else will get to know. See, those who were forgiven much know how to love much because you've been through it. You know. You know. See, don't focus on what you don't have. Don't focus on your struggle. Just know that now it positions you to love like you've never loved before. You get to love like that person next to you might not get to love because you have been forgiven. You have been positioned for the promise. I told you it's a baby dedication, but we're going to preach this thing. Y'all didn't know these things could preach like this, did you? I didn't either. Y'all experiencing it with me for the first time. Okay. 1 Samuel 1:8. And I'm doing good on time. That's pretty good for me. We threw the first point. Y'all know me, I'm long-winded. Okay. 1 Samuel 1:8. Why are you crying, Hannah? Elkanah would ask, why aren't you eating? Why be downhearted just because you have no children? You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons? See, the thing about this story is Hannah knew her capacity to bear children. She knew what she was designed for. She knew that the desire of her heart was that God had put on the inside of her to have. She just had not yet tasted and seen of it just yet. And see, her husband, maybe meaning well, attempts to distract her from what she was originally designed for to get her to settle for what she already has. See, what you already have is easy, but what you were designed for is tough, friend. It's not an easy journey to get there. It doesn't just fall in your lap. You're going to have to press in like you've never had to press in. You're going to have to search like you've never had to search. You're going to have to risk being offended and hurt and let down, betrayed. It's all part of the process. But see, the husband just wanted to say, hey, isn't it just all right? Aren't I enough? See, how long in the middle of our wedding? See, remember, she's 10 years in plus. See, she was 10 years in when Peninnah came on the story. Peninnah already now has children. She's way into this story. She's been in the waiting for years. See, we think when we hadn't tasted and seen of it in a matter of months or weeks or days, that God's taken too long. How long did Job have to wait? How long did Moses have to wait? How long did Abraham have to wait? How long did Paul and Peter, before they saw all the things that God had designed them for, how long did they have to wait? See, Abraham didn't even get to see the promised land. But yet, whenever he saw it alive in his children, he said, that's as good as it happening to me. See, some of us are too self-conscious that we can't honor what's happening in the next generation. You can't celebrate that if it happens to them, it's the same as happening to you. Because you don't realize you were the seed that was supposed to die so that they could grow. You're still worried about achieving your own dreams and your own vision. Friend, you got to realize this whole story is bigger than you. And what God wants to do is going to take more than your generation or the next generation. I know you're ready for God to come quickly and take you away, but people have been waiting 2,000 years, and I'm excited for it. But in the meantime, I'm sowing into the next generation. I'm positioning myself for God to begin to do exactly what He wants to do. And I'm okay if it doesn't always happen completely with me. It doesn't all have to happen through me. In fact, the more of you that it happens through, the more effective we'll all be. We're all healthier when you're not dependent upon me. We got to be dependent upon Him. If you looked at me, I'm going to turn to the side and say, look at him. All I am is a signpost. That is it. And so what happens is Elkanah's like, Hannah, isn't this enough? Aren't I just enough? And see, this is what the voice of compromise does. It's so subtle. It happens over time. See, it's not immediate. It's one little small thing that we step into at a time. And over a period of time, who we become is totally unrecognizable for who we were supposed to be. And so before long, instead of being a mother, all you are is a babysitter. But had you have waited and pressed in, you might have received the capacity to birth. See, this compromise is really the kryptonite for the church. And it is what is really captured and apprehended religion. See, it's the first time you pray for someone and you don't see them healed. It's like, okay, well, maybe I'll try again. And then there's the third and the fourth, and before long, you don't see it happen. It's been 10 years, it's been 20 years, it's been 30 years, and then before long, we create entire theologies like just God doesn't do that anymore. You believed for that baptism in the Holy Spirit, and you didn't see it happen. And so before long, we create theologies that was non-normative, and so now that's not available for today. Someone gave you a bad word and they misread you and they were inauthentic in their prophecy, so now you say that's not for today either. This is the 10th time that you've dealt with that same sin cycle. So I can't be free. I'll always struggle with sin. It's the compromise. It's the little thought. It starts as a thought. Before long, we'll say, well, we won't totally go this direction, but maybe I'll make this slight adjustment. And then next time there's another slight adjustment. And before long, we're just negotiating everything that we originally stood for. One small negotiation, one small compromise at a time. We didn't see God show up in our prayer time like we thought he would. I've been in 3 months of a dry season. I don't know, man. Maybe God is just really far off. He doesn't really encounter his people. That's kind of gone and passed away now. I'm just really good listening to a few sermon once a week and sing a few songs like it's karaoke, and we'll call that religion. It's the compromise. I know you had 3 businesses fail, but maybe you are supposed to be an entrepreneur. I know it didn't work out the first 3 times or the first 4 times. How often is that our stories? Is because we didn't see the breakthrough the way that we thought we would in the timeline we thought we should see it in. We start making the compromise, and before long the compromise comes in, and before long we convince ourselves that what we once thought was true was not true. We misunderstood. And so now we had to dumb it down to make it more attainable so we could attain it in our own strength, strategy, and vision. The problem is the moment you did that is you took God out of it because you didn't need God to achieve it. You could get there in your own wit, your own intellect, your own strategy, your own quick-witted thinking, your own discipline, and all these things. And you realize you took God completely out of the equation. We do it in our church services. Oh, we can do 2 fast songs, then we can get it really slow and make you feel somber, make you get really engaged and make you get tearful. Oh, and if homeboy over there hit that guitar string just right, we can make you feel something. Listen, if it's not authentic, if it's not God, if it's not his presence, and if it's not his spirit, then I don't want anything to do with it. Listen, I'm telling you, I got way too much going on in my life to go here and just play games. I'm serious about this thing. I've got 100 other things that I could be doing, and if this ain't real, then I don't want no part of it. But if it's real, it's worth everything. It's worth everything. There is no reservation. There is no room for compromise. maybe I'll make this slight adjustment. Slight adjustment. Stood for. Gone and passed away. Or we convince our down to make it more. You didn't even got to your own quick, your own discipline. To make you get tear, make it harsh. Listen, if it's not God. Listen, I'm telling you, in my life to go here. Doing it the same. Compromise. His friend, I don't he said it. See, that's the attitude. Sometimes he'll whisper, just ain't ready to hear. He colors a negative. How can I bow down to that? And just know you're not a word. I've got a promise. And I've got a promise. See, this is teach us that. And so he goes into the temple and sees all them for more than they would. Their scales were not. They were cheats, and they were. Jesus, my Father's house. Word merchandise means negotiation. He said, "You have made the place a place of tuning this thing." In the same passage, they're like, "What are you talking? Temple to build?" He killed on the cross. But isn't a temple? Tear this body down. I will be. Trinitarianism, but here's the thing. Build it, and of dedicated consecration, I'll make sure that you're in the middle of her lack, in the middle of her insecurity, in the middle of her anxiety, in the middle of her not measuring up. She finds it within herself to go before the Lord and lay it at his feet. She finds the courage to ask God for what her heart desires. And when she gets there, the religious priest thinks she's drunk. So you have to understand that your radical pursuit will often mean you're misunderstood. Your radical pursuit of God, your unwillingness to negotiate the things of God in your life often mean that you will be misunderstood by everyone around you. Religion certainly will not get it. They will not understand you. Anthony, why do you chase down every person you see limping at Walmart? Listen, man, God wants them healed. I don't know. I just get them. Like, why do you do? And do you see it every time? No, I don't see it happen every time. But my job is not always to see the breakthrough happen. My job is to get to the plate, and I swing for the fence every time like I can't miss. Because I'm not paying attention to what I don't see yet. The only thing that gets my attention is his voice and his word over my life. The only thing that has my attention is the promise, what he's assured me. Nothing else will have place in my life. No thought, no opinion. I don't even like opinions. If it's not his thought, then get rid of it. It's not worth your time. It's just not worth it. If it's not what he thinks about you, what he says about you. Why are you wasting your time entertaining it? It's just a voice of compromise. Are you still for sale? Are we going to let that creep in a little bit more? I mean, really, how radical are you willing to get? Now, when I talk about being radical for God, I'm not talking about being in the flesh, doing ridiculous things for the sake of being seen by man. I'm talking about things that are pure and undefiled. I'm talking about things that are really from the place of the heart, in a pure place. But that often means that people just aren't going to get you. And you're going to have to be okay with that. See, your waiting will reduce you to really answering the question, is he enough? Is God really everything? Is he everything in your life? Or are you still just waiting for something else that seems a little better, a better opportunity? See, when you said yes to him, you didn't get to have it your way and his way. There's just his way. And it's radical, man. It's different. It's an everyday decision and choice to pursue him more than you'll pursue anything else. It's to choose to know him and to serve him above any other voice, above any other pull and any other tension. See, when you didn't see if you would get your success. See, I know this because this is something that I wrestled with in my life. And excuse my voice, guys. I was battling something earlier in the week, and my voice is just shot, so just work with me. I sound like Lou Engle up here, if y'all know who that is. Yeah, thank you. Sounds like I've been praying real hard. Got a real pastor's voice, you know. Yeah, it's got a little grit to it. I don't know. It might just stay like this. I don't know. So, it's one of those things that I feel that we have to get to the place of understanding that we're not going to lower the standard just because we haven't seen it yet. We're not going to start negotiating what God has called over us and over this church, over this body, over this community, just because we haven't seen it happen in our timeline. And I know this struggle personally. I mean, I ran for the ministry for years. I know y'all think I got into it early, but literally I ran from this for years. I don't know that I've ever shared this publicly, but it was prophesied over me when I was 9 years old, and we were not even avid churchgoers. My mom would go like 3 months, and then we'd be out for 4 years, and we'd go for 2 months. Oh, that's some of y'all. Okay. All right, you know. Now, my mom, I want to be clear. My mom did the best she could. She's a beautiful lady, and so I don't mean that in dishonor to her, but that's just my story. And I remember going to this little Pentecostal church, and it was wild, bro. It was wild. And yeah, just a few old ladies, but they knew how to get down. Like they could outrun Usain Bolt. I mean, I kid you not. And they just knew to leave the bobby pins out because they wasn't going to last. But I know y'all from non-Pentecostal backgrounds, you're like, what you talking about? But just roll with me here. So at 9 years old, it was prophesied over me that I'd be a pastor. And I almost forgot that. Really, I did. Until I was about 17, I had this incredible encounter with God. It's the first, like, real, also physical encounter I had with God. Like, I had never had that before. Maybe had encountered God on some emotional level, intellectual level, but never in a truly physical way. And God brought that back to my remembrance. And I even asked my mom, I'm like, hey, Mom, you remember this? She's like, yeah, I remember this. You crazy? It's like, your grandma used to prophesy over you when I was pregnant. See, my great-grandmother was actually the spiritual matriarch in my family. She was the one that was very committed. And those of you that were involved at Evangel Temple for years, she was Edna Martin. She was, Frank, you know her. She was here for a very long time. And so it's funny now that this is the church that I eventually pastor. It's kind of wild if you think about it. But because I experienced so many different things that didn't happen the way I thought they should, I had almost got to the point where I convinced myself that it's like, yeah, I don't know that I'll ever do that. Like, I know it sounds great. I just have too many questions. I have too many struggles. I have too many wrestlings. This was, 17, 18, 19. And, it's that time of your life where you're trying to figure out who you are, trying to really understand what it is that you believe and why you believe it instead of just taking on everyone else's tutelage, right? Tutelage meaning like what they think and know, okay? I read some Immanuel Kant one time. That's where I got tutelage from, in case you're wondering. Those college days. Anyways, don't read anything from the Enlightenment period. They were not very enlightened, in case you're wondering. Just read the Word. It'll help you a lot. So y'all are getting much more of a window into my life right now than I intended in this moment. But what I'm trying to get you to see, if I'll get there, is that there was a series of events that happened over my life in years that I tried to convince myself, oh no, this just isn't going to happen. I just have too many struggles, not sin cycles, but just too many internal wrestlings, things I just didn't think I would be ready. And then God came and changed everything, years before I became a pastor, but he did. He came and he changed everything for me. And what I want to encourage you is even though if you can't see it quite yet, if he spoke it, he saw something in you, even if you don't see it. And that's where I want to land this thing, is even if you don't see quite yet how this is all going to come, how it's all going to come to pass and draw together, it's going to come. Your job is not to figure it out. And see, that's where I messed up, is I thought I had to figure it out. Like I had to, because I'm a planner. I got to lay it all out. And pastor's like, you get done with your sermons if you do that with your sermons instead of just talking, right? If you just lay it out. I do. I just don't listen to myself. But I like to just lay it all out. And the thing is what we're called is to just turn our attention to him and turn our adoration to him, to allow no voice of compromise. When we allow our heart to stay there in intimacy, close, then you'll watch God naturally take care of everything else. Like, think about it if for those of you that are married in the room, or have had a significant partnership of some kind, okay? You don't think about, okay, well, what's the list of things I have to do to cultivate my love for that person? There's some things that just in keeping yourself close and preferring them, there are things that you will just naturally do as a consequence of your love. Does that make sense? So there are things that will culminate in a healthy marriage. Now, I'm not saying there's not intentionality, right? Because there is that. I'm not saying there's not sacrifice. There are all of those things. But the point is you don't have to have it all planned out. All you have to do is have a heart that is sensitive and conquered in love. When you have that, everything else will really take care of itself. And so I think that that's really the big takeaway from this message is like, well, how do we do all this stuff? This sounds really great. I love this idea of having this dedicated consecration to the Lord. But how do I do it? And I would just say this, stay tender. Keep your attention turned towards him. Because when your affection is on him, no other lover, no other voice, nothing else can compete. It just simply can't. Compromise is not appealing. It's not, because it's so inferior to what you're hearing. And that's the key word, hearing now. Quit living on what you got 20 years ago. You have to sit at his feet and eat every day. Yeah, it has to stay fresh. That's how it stays alive. It stays fresh. Is this helping anybody? Yeah. Okay. So, with all that being said, I think that some of the big takeaways that we can have from this morning is that God has called us to live a life that is fully dedicated to him and consecrated in his presence. I feel like one of the things that we have to understand is if we begin to marry things in compromise, it'll always mock our promise. God doesn't want your temple, your body, to become a place of trade, negotiation, or exchange. The way that you deal with that is understand that until you're sold, you'll always be for sale. But with laying your life completely down, it means a radical pursuit that will often be misunderstood by the people around you, and religion will reject you. But the thing that you have to remember, it's not the voice of religion or people whereby you get your approval. It's only the Father's voice.